First, we have Andy Challis to speak, who is the Operations and Research Manager at Proskills, who are champions for skills development. He has over 10 years' experience of leading skills research and development projects across the UK and abroad. He maintains responsibility for project development, project implementation, commercial business development and information management at Proskills. He has experience in hospitality trade and delivered staff training and development for his own teams as well as others. He has provided a spectrum of management and consulting roles in the private, public and third sectors. He has a comprehensive understanding of the importance of education and training from both a practical and a theoretical standpoint. So you might know a thing or two. Andy, you're on.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks everyone for having us here today. First of all, a couple of things that I'm not going to talk about today. Carl mentioned our Make It programme that we run with schools. You will hear a lot about that this afternoon, so I'm not actually going to mention that now. It's been a very good success, and we are working with the furniture makers to try and expand that as well. So you'll hear more about that later. As Paul said, we provide a whole load of services to the sector in terms of qualification development, research, other supporting sort of partnership activities as well. I'm not going to talk about those either. If you want to know more about it, you can come and see me or my colleague Lisa, who's at the back of the room today, and we're more than happy to talk to you about anything else that we do. What I am going to talk to you about today is the training that exists for the sector. As Pete said this morning, it's okay-ish. There are some excellent examples of training for the sector, of qualifications for the sector out there. The co-members of this panel will talk to you, I'm sure, in more detail about what they do. We've worked with both of them before, and we know that they provide some excellent services for the industry. But as well as these people who are known to this group in the room and to the industry wide, what else is there around in terms of qualifications? And so this slide is a little bit daunting to start off with, but this is the English qualifications system. This is what it looks like. This is what we have to deal with all day, every day, and we have to try and fit bits of what we do into different parts of this diagram. Now, it's in 3 columns. The left-hand side is perhaps what's thought of as a traditional academic route, in inverted commas. You go through your school, you go to university, and you might progress onto something postgraduate there. At the moment, that is the route with the highest profile. There have been considerable efforts on behalf of government and industry and all sorts of other people to bring the other routes up to that sort of level as well. We're making some progress, but we're not there yet. So the alternatives to that route are to follow a vocational route, something that is based on real skills that are needed in the workplace, or an apprenticeship which combines a sort of workplace knowledge and competence that you need with some classroom training as well. So this is the overall system. In the furniture sector, there are university degrees. I know in this room we have a couple of people from universities. There's a whole range of provision there, which I'll come on to and talk more about in a minute. There are also foundation degrees, which are ways of linking university provision to industry. So it's kind of an apprenticeship type model, but at a higher level. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about that. Alongside that, we have industry qualifications, vocational qualifications at levels 1, 2 and 3. Mostly. That means they're up to A-level type complexity, and when people have finished those, they can progress on to the higher education I've mentioned already. And we have apprenticeships in the industry as well. I'll talk a bit about how those apprenticeships have worked previously, but also about the Trailblazer, which somebody, possibly Pete, mentioned earlier on, I think. Oh no, Carl again, sorry. So there's a lot out there already. We'll start off with the universities and higher education. There are a lot of design courses out there. There are a dozen or so universities that provide these courses. Here are some examples of the titles: furniture and product design, that sort of thing, 3D design, product design. Some of them have specialist furniture departments, some of them are subsets of a wider sort of design and product design type department. There's some excellent practice here. I know that the furniture makers have very good engagement with certainly universities in London and in the south as well. But there are also 2 foundation degrees, which are these qualifications that link higher level occupations in a workplace with higher level education as well, and allow people who've finished their A-levels or maybe finished a BTEC at school or at college to go on and study at this higher level and get it accredited by a university, so they can then progress onto a full degree if they want to, or onto management qualifications in the workplace as well. And there are 2 of those active at the moment. One of them's up in the northeast in Newcastle, and the other one is down here in the southeast. As well as these design qualifications, there are also some other manufacturing qualifications that may be relevant to some of the larger companies, or to some of the smaller companies even. But there aren't very many courses directly linked to production management. And I know from previous conversations with employers here and elsewhere that that's a problem. They can't get people in with the sort of background knowledge to start running production in a company effectively without them going through some sort of internal training courses. And it may be that that's never going to work, and you're never going to get someone straight from university who can come in and fit into those roles. But having no sort of knowledge of that in the universities at all is perhaps something of a gap. So if we look at where these universities are, I've done a little map for you here. We've got details of all of these courses. If you do want to engage with the university and you see that there's somebody around your area where you're based, do come and have a word with us. We can provide you with details of these courses and possible contacts for you to start talking to there as well. So that's the higher education sector. We'll talk a bit more about vocational and workplace qualifications. Now this is the bit where it gets complicated, because the government likes to mess around with this. Every government that comes in starts again from scratch pretty much. We've seen 3 of them do it. We're currently in the 3rd round of changes within 3 years here, which does nobody any favours really, least of all the industry. So over the 10 years that we've been operating, we've seen 3 different ways of structuring this stuff. And you may have heard of some of them. Don't worry too much about the acronyms, because they're really not important. We started off with the NQF, the National Qualifications Framework, where we had NVQs, which are competence-based qualifications, so they test what people can actually do in the workplace. We then moved on to the QCF under the last government, or maybe the last Labour government, which brought in more of a sort of knowledge-based thing into the workplace as well, so people could be tested on what they know as well as what they could actually do with their hands. And we've now just had another framework launched again this year, because the 5 years are up and somebody needs to spend their printing budget. And this is the Regulated Qualifications Framework. What difference has it made? Not a lot. Each framework is slightly more flexible than the last. So this new one, the RQF, will actually allow employers to come in and design their own qualifications that can be used by only that employer. But they can get their own certificates for those qualifications from the national authorities, from the awarding bodies who develop these qualifications, but they can keep it just for themselves. So that's something new here. There will still be national qualifications, and I'll come on to talk to a bit more about that in a sec. But this is a new development, so a new thing that employers can do. Where do they come from, these qualifications? Well, we've been developing qualifications for quite some time alongside all sorts of other organisations as well. The employers are the key to it. We take the content from the employers. They tell us what they want in these qualifications through a variety of routes. It may be through the development of national occupational standards. It may be through direct engagement. It may be through training providers or other industry bodies like BFM, BFC, furniture makers, where we find out there are gaps in the market and we help them to develop them. There are 3 awarding organisations that serve the sector: City and Guilds, PIABC, and our awarding body, Occupational Awards, which has just started this year. We are developing qualifications and we register them on the national frameworks. It's our responsibility as an awarding body to make sure the quality is there and the consistency is there across the delivery of these qualifications. And the training providers then get involved. We've worked with Didac and some of the colleges as well. They'll help to develop the curricula for these projects, the actual teaching materials, and advise on delivery methods and the way that these can actually be brought to the learners and the way that they can learn as well. So it's a kind of tripartite arrangement, and all of these organisations are vital, but the employer input is where it comes from. So some of the qualifications that exist at the moment, they start at level 1, which was at the bottom of that diagram that I showed on the first page. We have a level 1 diploma in furniture occupations that gives an introduction to the industry, and it covers the whole industry, not just the technical skills, but the sort of skills and behaviours that people need to work effectively in the industry as well. So it will look at how do you apply for a job, because it's aimed at under 16-year-olds. It will also look at the sort of things they will need to perform effectively in the workplace, like team working, communication, that sort of thing as well. Once you get up to level 2, you start to specialise a little bit more. So you focus on specific areas. Again, these are just some examples of the qualifications that exist at the moment. Specialisms in upholstery or wood machining, something around furniture making or installation. Some of this content is more generic than the others. The more generic ones tend to be used in colleges to be delivered directly to people who are looking to enter the industry. Some of the more specialised ones can be used in the workplace for people who have specific skills gaps that they want to be able to fill by training up people there as well. And as you move up to level 3, you become slightly more specialised again, and you get to a higher skill level. This may bring in some elements of supervision or team leading as well once you get to this sort of level. So this is where the providers are for these qualifications. Now, I know in conversations with Charles and some other people here, people don't know where these organisations are that deliver these training. But there are 48 of them in England, 45 and 3 in Northern Ireland, I should say. There are some in Scotland as well, but we're talking England today. That's a lot of people. Not all of them delivered in the workplace. Some of them are colleges who only train up young people on the actual college premises. Some of them are private providers who will deliver across the whole country. And I know Martin will probably talk to you a bit more about that in a minute. But there is a lot of provision out there, and there is some excellent practice in there as well. Part of our role is to bring that excellent practice to events like this and to help share it and improve the standard across the whole industry. Some funding's available for this, but it's different amounts for different qualifications. The government doesn't like to make this easy, especially not at the moment when they're struggling to find any money for education at all. It depends on the age of your learners, the size of your business, where you are, the length of the qualification. There's a list as long as your arm that will probably chalk most people off the list, but there is still some funding for it out there. If you want some advice on that, we'd be happy to talk to you. Some of the training providers will be happy to talk to you as well, I'm sure. Lastly, a bit about apprenticeships. Apprenticeships are top of the government's list at the moment. They are introducing a new system of apprenticeships, which are currently known as Trailblazers. The first lot have been approved. Mick from Silent Night is here. He's leading the development of the Trailblazer for furniture at level 2. They've changed slightly. The idea behind this change is to make them less complicated. Whether that is successful or not remains to be seen, but they will be single qualifications. Previous apprenticeships have had a group of qualifications in there. The idea behind this lot is that they will be a single qualification, so it should make it easier for people to find their way through it. The other key principle behind it was that employers should have the direct say over what the content of these apprenticeships should be. That's great, absolutely, we support it. We would argue that was the case with the last lot as well, but they've changed the way that things are happening. What it means is that there's very little funding for the development of these, because if employers are doing it, then employers should pay for it themselves. That's the way that things are at the moment. We can argue the wrongs and rights of that until the cows come home, I'm sure, but it does mean that a lot of the development work that's going on at the moment is done on a pretty much voluntary basis. So anyone here that's been involved with it should have the thanks of the industry, because they are keeping things going at this national level and keeping the profile going as well. They are looking at levying larger employers. the implementation and discussions around this has been somewhat confused so far. We will keep people in touch through our newsletters and through the other organisations here as to what goes on and what implications that may have for the industry, but nobody's quite clear about what the problem are. But the government has targeted the delivery of 3 million apprenticeships during this Parliament. That's roughly double the number that was delivered during the last Parliament and is ambitious, to say the least. At the same time as focusing on doubling the number of apprenticeships, they're also trying to enforce quality in apprenticeships as well. Quality versus quantity is the big argument here. They probably could churn through 3 million apprenticeships in 5 years, but it would be 3-month jobs for people at Morrison's who were already trained to do the job, and they'd be signing off certificates, as happened under the last but one government as well, I suspect. But apprenticeships will continue to be big news, which is good news for the development in this industry and in other industries as well. And there will be further developments as we move into the last years of this Parliament as well. The previous models are still available. These are the areas they cover. These will be delivered by training providers that we have sitting up here with us, as well as some of the others that are out in the crowd today as well. Again, if you have any interest in any of the areas that are listed up there, please come and talk to us or talk to the training providers. We can help you to find someone who will deliver. Some of the providers deliver nationally, most of them will come and deliver directly in your workplace, because the apprenticeship has that workplace component as well. So there is flexibility there. I've already mentioned the Trailblazer, but there will be a need for another Trailblazer, and we will be looking for people to be involved with that as it comes up. So this is where the training providers are for apprenticeships. This is a list. Again, we have this list that we maintain. If you're interested in getting apprenticeships, or you know people that are, come and talk to us. We can help you to find the right person who delivers the course that you need. Funding for apprenticeships, slightly less complicated than it is for qualifications as a rule. As an employer, you can get a £1,500 apprenticeship grant if you meet those conditions. There are some areas where that may be more flexible, so if you have apprentices and you're not getting these grants, again, come and talk to us. We'll see what we can find out for you. The training provider can also apply for funding to cover the training part of the apprentice's role, and again, that's dependent on the age of the learners. The government is prioritising younger people to get them off the streets, keep them busy. The funding for Trailblazers is again a huge, great discussion point at the moment. Nobody is clear how it's going to work. The things that have been proposed so far are basically unimplementable. So they're having a reality check on that at the moment. There is likely to be some funding, but nobody knows where that will be. Again, as soon as we find out anything concrete, we will let you know. That's it. Thank you very much.